Trigger warning. The following podcast contains content that may be deeply disturbing. You will hear first-hand accounts from parents and family members who have lost children to filicide, the murder of a child by a parent or caregiver. These stories are raw, emotional, and shared from the perspective of those who have lived them. They include details of unimaginable loss, system failures, and trauma. Please take care while listening. If at any point you need to pause, stop, or step away, we understand. Hello, and welcome to Voices Against Filicide. I'm your host, Hope Hooten, a mother who has walked this journey and an advocate turning my pain into purpose. This podcast sheds light on filicide cases, statistics, who these children were, the warning signs missed, and the advocacy being done in their honor, and so much more. Together, we speak the truth, honor their lives, and fight for change. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to honor two of the brightest lights I've ever known. My children, Alec and Lydia. Alec with his love for Pokemon and his kind heart, and Lydia full of joy and her love of unicorns. They're more than my whole world. They were joy in human form. Their laughter, their hugs, their imaginations. All of it lives on in me, in this podcast, and in the work I do every day to protect children and raise awareness. This podcast is for them. It's for every child whose voice was silenced too soon. Alec and Lydia, you are my why, and I will never stop fighting in your name. Thank you for joining me today, and let's get right into today's episode. Today, I am joined by Representative Rachel Keshel from Arizona. Welcome, Rachel Keshel.
Thank you, Hope. I'm so excited to be on with you.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, yes, I am a mom of 5. 3 are adults, so they don't really need me anymore. And my 2 youngest are adopted, as well as my 20-year-old. So we adopted them out of foster care.
Okay.
So I never, ever thought that I would be a politician. That still kind of leaves a really bad taste in my mouth, quite frankly. But it's been wonderful. The wonderful part has been helping constituents. And one of the most meaningful has been helping families in family courts. And I'm just honored and humbled to meet those families. And you are one of those individuals that I've met that I just cannot believe how strong you are. And so, yeah, I am a representative in the state of Arizona. Mm-hmm. And I love fighting for the people. I don't like being in the swamp, but that's part of it, unfortunately. So here we are.
Yeah. And what kind of got you into being a legislator? Like, what you said that you never imagined yourself here. What kind of got you here?
Well, honestly, it was kind of after 2020. That was just a really rough year for a lot of people with COVID and things like that. And then, you know, the election came and that was kind of wild. And I wasn't very excited about the direction our country was going, in my opinion. And I was looking at my 5 children, just thinking, I do not like what this wonderful country that I love, the trajectory that it's on. So I thought, you know, instead of sitting here yelling and screaming at the TV all the time, maybe I need to get off my lazy butt and get involved. And so I decided to run for the state legislature. And I ran with a team of 2 others. We were definitely the grassroots for the people candidates. And we won. We got in, and we, you know, had always promised that we would be there fighting for the people and not for the lobbyists and the special interests and all those. Unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues, that is what they fight for all of the time. But I feel like one thing I'm proud of, I've definitely kept that promise to my constituents. That's why they trust me a lot. And the lobbyists absolutely hate my guts, which I'm very proud of. So, I'm owned by nobody but Jesus,
Yes.
God, and that's kind of what has given me the strength to just stick to my guns and stay strong for my constituents.
Yeah, so here on the podcast, faith is super important to our mission. It's at our core. We do advocate and fight for reform while spreading awareness of filicide and sharing stories of families who have gone through that. But can you tell me what your faith has been like, how you keep your faith in a world, especially the world that you're in?
Well, in both of what you just said, I don't understand how anybody does anything in this world without faith. It can seem very chaotic and very crazy and very divided, the world that we live in, and especially, like you said, in politics, which I already called it the swamp. So you kind of understand what I'm talking about. I wouldn't be able to do what I do and stay as strong and, have so much integrity if it wasn't for my faith, because that is a world where it's very easy to get pulled, away from that and to get enticed and things like that, to maybe sell out your principles a little bit. And so without God being my foundation, I can understand why some people, that's the way that they end up going once they get into government. For me, my identity is fully in God. And so another thing about this awful world of politics is you take a lot of slings and arrows.
Yes.
The media hates me. So whenever I'm feeling kind of beat up, whether it's on X or the media or whatever, God is always up there reminding me, hey, wait a second, you know what I think of you. You know what I know about you to be the truth. Remember to keep your eyes on me. And so that has been hugely helpful. And my old seatmate used to tell me it's actually my superpower was not caring what people think. But God gets the credit for that.
Yes.
He's the one that keeps me grounded and reminds me who I serve, who, knows the truth of me, where my truth lies. And so that's been really helpful.
That's amazing. Honestly, that's why I'm sitting here today. And I often get, you're so strong. Well, I'm strong because I put my faith in him, and I keep going, and I'm doing what I'm doing because I know that I can help other people through him. So,
yeah. Amen.
Okay. So we talked about your faith. The next thing I wanted to talk about is you stepped forward alongside other legislators and Senator Mark Fincham to rally and spearhead the movement for Arizona's family court reform. What made you kind of want to jump on board with that? Because that's an amazing task, but it's a lot.
Yeah, well, yes, it is a very big mountain to traverse, and I think we're just starting to scratch the surface. And I had no idea it was going to turn into this movement like it did. It was definitely a God thing because, as I mentioned, 3 of my kids are adopted out of foster care. One of my colleagues, he brought a family to me. He said, hey, Rachel, you know a lot about the juvenile court, so I think maybe you can help this family. They're in a family court case that's just crazy and terrible. And so I met with this family, and I could not believe the things that I was hearing. They had spent, I think, $4 million at that point in time for their granddaughter. They were stuck with terrible therapist interventionists who were just robbing them blind, quite frankly. The judge was ignoring evidence, kind of like what you experienced, just not wanting to listen at all. And so knowing that I have a legislative lane to stay in, I'm not the attorney general, I can't investigate, but I definitely can inquire on behalf of a constituent. So I just sent the judge a very direct letter. I just said, what are you doing? What are you doing with this? Are you following the law here? Just kind of called her out. And what followed was very interesting. I knew that I was shaking a huge beehive. People were very nervous in the Maricopa Superior Courts. And I may have accidentally sent that letter out to everybody. And so other judges knew what I was inquiring into. And it was I think it was the day that they were nervous that this judge was going to have their daughter arrested with no reason, no evidence to be able to do so. She stayed the hearing, and then eventually we ended up getting her to recuse herself off of the case. So just with a little pressure, we were able to kind of deal with that. And since then, I've met hundreds of families. I've met numerous people all over the country, and we've had some similar successes with some of the other judges. Now, I don't think all of the judges are bad apples. I really don't. I don't think all of the attorneys are bad apples. I think there's a handful of those. And it seems, I don't know why they make the decisions they do. I don't know why they're not following the law. But as a legislator, we have 3 branches of government. And honestly, according to the Constitution, the legislature is not a co-equal branch. It's above the judiciary. And we've gotten to the point where they are so lawless, some of these judges over there, that I feel like it's time for the legislature to step in and kind of go, what are you doing? If you're not going to follow the law, you don't need to be on the bench.
Yes.
And so your case, I still have a lot of questions about that. I know that you've struggled. I don't know how much you've shared with your audience, but I know you've struggled to even have transparency in what's going on. And I hope you can get that because the things that are going on, and, just to be honest, after that initial judge, my old house was almost burnt down, and I was getting very weird calls at the Capitol from the Mesa Police Department, from detectives over there wondering what I was doing. And so I knew I was shaking a big beehive, like I said. But one thing these people don't know about me, obviously, is I don't scare very easily. And that can be attributed to my well. If there's something that I feel like needs to change, I get pretty headstrong about it. And then Mark Fincham, of course, had a bad experience himself. So he called me probably April of last year, and he said, what is going on in the family courts? And said, I heard that you're doing a lot with it. And so that was a God thing too. That brought Mark in, Senator Fincham, and then we were able to kind of tag team and get the hearings going, which I was really struggling to do in the House of Representatives with my leadership. Mark, Senator Fincham, was able to do that with his leadership in the Senate. So he was really a godsend, able to get those hearings going so we could really show the public how bad this is. And here we are all these months later, where it's become kind of this tidal wave across the nation. I've talked to other legislators in other states, and we're really working together to get some good legislation going.
That's amazing. I know that there was thousands of people that came forward during the ad hoc committee meetings, and you heard a lot of their testimonies. Can you share how that put a fire under you more, or impacted you in some way to keep moving forward?
Oh, well, it was definitely validating everything that I had heard from so many families that were calling me, because they felt like someone was finally listening. When we started doing this here in Arizona, it was people from California were calling me, Texas, all over, just saying thank you, because this is happening everywhere. And when you hear some of the stories about the way that one ex-spouse is using the court system to continue to abuse the other ex-spouse, whether it's financially abuse them, and some of the players within the court system, like the therapists, interventionists, the attorneys, are absolutely abusing the system to make money as well. And the saddest part is every story, every person that got up to testify, and especially, the worst case scenario, the awful thing that happened to you, is the kids. The kids are the ones suffering the most. It's like the kids are in this, just getting the short end of the stick every single time. And I do think a lot of some of the parents who use the system to abuse the other parent, there are a lot of, I think, personality disorders and different issues that is adding to some of this in the family courts. And so we do have some legislation that has to do more with training the judges, so they kind of know how to recognize some of that and to deal with these things better. But ultimately, judges shouldn't be meddling in family affairs as much as they are. And that's one of the worst things that's began to happen in family courts. They have way too much of a role and a hand in this stuff. And then they have way too much discretion, where I even heard a recording from the hearings. Actually, one of the ladies that testified, Kristen Alcott, she made waves when she testified that, basically judges can do whatever they want because there's an appeals court. Well, most of the people that take it to appeals, that goes nowhere.
Correct.
And after that same person, Kristen Alcott, I heard a recording from another parent where she was speaking to this person's son. And this was a situation where the boys kept being placed back with the father who was abusing them. They had bruises on their bodies. They had been choked by him. And on the recording, this little 9-year-old boy is having a conversation with Kristen Alcott, who was supervisor in that case. And at one point she said, but you just have to do what the judge says you have to do. And he says, well, the judge isn't God. And she goes, I beg to differ.
Wow. No, no, judges are not playing God. That's no. Going into that, I get this question a lot. It was posed by friends and family when my incident first happened. And then it's been posed by my social media followers all the time because I don't think people understand. But can you explain what judicial immunity is and how did it come about and why do we want to abolish it?
Well, judicial immunity was created by, guess who? Judges. It is not constitutional, which as a legislator, I'm very constitutional. Every time I read a piece of legislation, the first thing I vet it based on is it constitutional? That is my very first thing. And so when you talk about judicial immunity, I understand the fear and the reason that they did it to a certain extent, because if you'd be sued constantly as a judge. Like every unhappy person or client of an attorney would potentially have the chance then to have, just because they didn't like your ruling or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I get it, but I think an even bigger problem than judicial immunity. I mean, if a judge is breaking the law, which I have blatantly seen, some of these judges are just breaking statutes that are already on the books. They're not following the law. That should be waived. Judicial immunity should not apply to them anymore. And if their decision or one of their rulings leads to someone being harmed, like your children
or murdered, yeah.
Yes, that's where it's like the judicial immunity shouldn't apply. And I know that there are court cases, I can't name them off the top of my head, but there is precedence that has been set with judges who have not had immunity any longer because of circumstances like similar to what you went through or in other criminal type cases, where there was just extreme negligence that led to, yes, death or harm to somebody. And so we do need to look at that. Another thing, though, that is even more troublesome to me is this quasi-judicial immunity that Senator Finchem brought up numerous times during the hearings, where some of these court-appointed officials, so your therapists, your supervisors, some of these other people, they're actually being covered under that same judicial immunity. And the thing about that is they are not appointed or elected. They should not have any immunity to that, because some of these therapists and supervisors are even writing certain rulings and things like that for the judges from what parents have told us and what people within the system have told us. And they're acting as the judge in some of these cases. But they, for sure, should not have immunity, judicial immunity. So I know that we're looking at that this next session because we realized how much that was being utilized to basically allow bad actors to be bad.
Yes. And I, working with you and other legislators to build family child safety laws for Arizona, I've noticed that maybe we won't be able to abolish judicial immunity right away, but I just want some sort of accountability, especially in my case of, I feel like the judge should have to go in front of a board or something. Like, I don't feel like he should be walking just around like normal, because yes, he didn't pull the trigger, but he caused 3 lives to be lost,
Yeah, well, the judge in your case should not be on the bench anymore. So I'm really praying that God is starting to work for you in that, but we'll leave it.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I talked about the several bills that we're working on for child safety. What gaps have you seen, and what kind of gaps with these child safety bills are we trying to fill moving forward?
Well, one of the biggest things, like I've mentioned numerous times, these therapist interventionists, especially here in Arizona, they have really kind of monopolized that section of the family courts. And so you have a very small handful of these men and women who are basically just getting these families, these parents stuck in this never-ending cycle of therapy. There used to be reunification camps. Thankfully, we outlawed that.
Yes.
Senator Shauna Bullock was the sponsor of that bill, but they have found slick loopholes and ways around that where they're still doing the reunification stuff. And the therapists, some of them are charging $1,000 an hour, and these people cannot afford that. And so we are definitely putting them in our target this session, where we're going to make sure, whether it's, that you have to accept insurance. I mean, we have to make sure that these families,
they don't go into huge amounts of debt. Like, that's not okay.
Some of these families testified that they're having to sell their homes to pay these debts. And so states like Nebraska, for example, you can pick your own therapist. So they don't just stick you with this court mandated therapist that you can't afford. So there are states that do these other ways where they don't have that issue like we do here with TIs and some of that. So I know that's one of the things we're looking at. I know the biggest mountain that we have to traverse, Representative Lisa Fink is the one mainly taking that on because she took it on last session. It was HB 2296 last year. It's from Title 25, Section 403, which is all about this. And I know a lot of your Alec and Lydia Act, they're putting a lot of that in there.
Bills. Yep.
Yes, with making sure that coercive control is defined, making sure that a lot of things are clarified, where if you are a victim of domestic violence and there's evidence to back that up, that obviously is going to change the 50-50 custody, because what we're seeing is a lot of these judges are starting at that point and then they're completely ignoring evidence of domestic violence and they're putting kids in constant harm's way. I've met numerous families, and that's one of the things I heard the most during the session last year. It was also new to everybody, I think, was, well, this is the rarity. This is a rarity. This is the rare, circumstance. And I thought, no way. So then when we pulled some of the Democrats in, like Betty Villegas, for the hearing, she was like, whoa, this is crazy. And so we're seeing a kind of come around from the Democrats, which we need, because if we're going to get signatures on the bills, we've got to have some support from them. I did have a few Democrat colleagues that were wonderful last session. They stood beside me in this and they voted yes on these bills. So now if we just get a few more, that's going to be really good momentum to have. And I've kind of stepped back from being the sponsor on a lot of them. I have become a very bad word in the Maricopa County Superior Courts. Like, they hear my name and it's like, oh. So I just, in order to ensure that we get these bills signed to help families and children, I'm doing a lot of work in the background, but I'm going to kind of keep my name off of a lot of it. And I have some colleagues that are going to help me run some of the legislation. And of course, I know a wonderful family court attorney who I just introduced you to.
Yes.
He has helped me draft a lot of bills, so they're really well written. I trust him infinitely. It's really nice to have attorneys, because I'm not an attorney. That's not my background. My background is teacher and a business person. So to have an attorney who I know I can trust, who knows the system really well, drafting some of the bills is an amazing gift to me. So
yes, that's amazing. And he's been amazing. He's working on the new Alec and Lydia Act, and we're going to focus on those very first steps of the family court, where if there's any sort of allegations of mental illness or domestic violence, any of those things, that there has to be a checklist or something that the judges follow to make sure that the children are safe before being put in their care unsupervised.
Wonderful. And And I am honored that you have, spoken to me and then Lisa and Senator Fincham and everybody, because to be asked to honor your kids in that way we're not taking that lightly. I just hope you know that. And I just think Alan being involved is just hugely helpful too. He's so smart with this stuff. And I think it's going to be an amazing piece of legislation, and would love for you to come and, be part of everything.
Oh, I will.
Yeah. As we get it grooving, and I feel really good about it. So yeah, that's, like I told you before, one of the most important things we're going to do this year, and I'm just honored to be even a small part of it. So
yeah, and I think that you talked about the coercion and the domestic violence in the other bill that Lisa Fink is kind of spearheading. I feel like that's still a part of my kiddos because it's a part of my story. So I feel like, yes, we're honoring Alec and Lydia and we're making an actual bill to honor them, but they're a part of each one of these child safety bills that we're going to try to put through this session.
Yes. Amen.
Before we move on, I want to acknowledge that the recent loss of Charlie Kirk, his death shook not only the conservative community nationwide, but essentially here in the state of Michigan and in Arizona across the globe. Arizona is where Turning Point USA is headquartered. And I wanted to ask you a few questions about Charlie Kirk. I know that you were at the special thing that they had at State Farm Stadium for his remembrance of life. I was wondering, how has his passing impacted you personally?
Well, I think it was amazing how much, as you mentioned, it had a global impact. When you're in Arizona politics, you know who Charlie Kirk is. I wasn't extremely close to him, but of course I knew him, and I am close to some of the others at Turning Point who lost a brother that day. He was more than a friend to a lot of them. He was more like a brother. And it was just, I was just in shock. It just, like so many people, it was like, how can you hurt so much over someone that you didn't know that well? There were some people that didn't know him at all, and they were still feeling that. I know my 19-year-old daughter said that. She's like, I don't know what it is. I never met him, but I am so hurt. I'm hurting over it. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the biggest thing, the biggest impact he had was on that generation. I have a son who's almost 21, a daughter who's 20, and a daughter who's 19. 20-year-old's a little wayward, and she doesn't quite believe the same things that I do. Mm-hmm. But I pray for her all the time. But as far as my almost 21-year-old and my 19-year-old, Charlie Kirk and Turning Point had so much of an effect on that generation, where I think one of the things we've lost over the last decade, maybe even more than that, a couple of decades, is the ability to have conversations with others who do not believe exactly the way we do. Mm-hmm. I know when I was younger, specifically, I remember a story when I was a senior in high school. I had a friend named Rachel as well, and she was opposite of me. She was an atheist, so she didn't believe in God. I did. She was very liberal minded, and I was always very conservative. I watched Ronald Reagan on the TV when I was a little girl. So that's just kind of always been the way I am. And we could have the most wonderful debates and conversations about religion, politics, whatever it was, and we could still be friends. And I have my kids who I look at, and I'm so sad that has changed. And I think Charlie Kirk, he was showing people that having dialogue is such a healthy thing for Americans and a good way for all of us to grow into better people. And I really do think we're going to see that he had a lasting impact on that generation. I know some of the horrific responses that we were seeing from one side of the aisle, the political aisle, was just evil at its core. And I know that there were a lot of people who were on that side. I've met some in person who said, I can't do this anymore, and have kind of reassessed where they stand after that, because they don't want to be affiliated with something so gross. Yeah. And so, it was the State Farm event. I mean, you could feel the Holy Spirit there. It was pretty amazing. And, I'm just, again, honored to have known him at all, and just to kind of see where his legacy continues to go. I know when I went to church the next Sunday, it was packed to the brim. They were bringing in extra churches or extra chairs in the church. And it was like, I can see how this is going to have a lasting effect, spiritual awakening, which we desperately need.
Yes. I think what empowered me and made me feel broken at the same time was when Erica Kirk forgave the gunman who shot her husband. And I feel the same way as she does, because we have to forgive, even though this world doesn't think that, right? They think that we should not forgive. I forgive my estranged husband for what he did, because it's not hurting him anymore. It's not hurting the gunman anymore. Charlie Kirk's gunman. It's hurting us as family. And so I think that's what really was like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. And like you said, that's another nudge, another wink from God, like you did the right thing. So
yeah, well, one of the hardest things to do, I think. But yeah, I think what you just said, what is that saying where not forgiving someone is like drinking poison, expecting it to kill them?
Yes.
It
kills you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes you so bitter.
Yes.
To not forgive. And so.
Because you would have the hard heart. And I wouldn't want to live like that. Like, it would have all that bitterness, and just release it to him, and he will take care of it. Yeah. So, in meeting you and meeting everyone that I've worked with in Arizona to make the Alec and Lydia Act and to make all these other child safety bills, that's reason enough for me to believe that I'm doing the right thing that God wants me to do.
Yeah, I really believe this is just the beginning. I really do. That's not just me saying that. I think that this is the beginning of getting this really fixed. And I do think that it will pour over into the juvenile courts. And then I actually just met with a group of women, some who have been fighting in the juvenile and family courts as well. But it was about the probate courts and elder abuse. So a lot of the stuff, it's the same corruption in all these branches of the courts. Yeah. And so, or different sections of the courts. So I think that we can do a lot of good in all three.
Correct.
Coming up with legislation that will touch all of them. And so I think it's just, the judiciary here in Arizona needs a lot of work. And so the fact that it's starting to kind of get brought out into the light is not a bad thing, because if we don't have, judges and courts that can treat us, citizens of Arizona, fairly, that's a huge problem.
Yes. For families who are right now stuck in Arizona family court system, they're scared, they're unheard, they're fighting alone, what message of hope or encouragement would you want to give them today?
Well, the cavalry is here. I know Senator Fincham, sometimes we butt heads. He is stubborn. I am stubborn. But I know that he's in this for the long haul, and he's going to stay committed and want to fix this. So am I. As long as God has me in this seat, I will keep fighting for the families and the kids in this until we get some good reform passed. And I do feel like now one of the best things we've done is brought this into the light, because now there are judges, as I said, and I want to keep reiterating, I do not think every judge is a bad apple and corrupt. I think that it really is a small handful that are potentially profiting. I don't know what it is. I don't want to make false accusations that I can't back up, but I'm saying there's a handful of bad players in this, but there are a lot of good judges, and there are a lot of judges that just don't know. They don't have enough direction, I think, with what to do to ensure that these cases are handled well. I think, to be honest, some of the judges, I've had parents call me and say, I think my judge is just lazy. And so I don't want to just paint everybody as, a horrific, corrupt character, but there are some. So I think if we can kind of give the good judges, the well-meaning judges, the tools that they need to be successful for these families, I know that they will greatly appreciate it, because this has brought all of them under the microscope. And I know the good ones don't even like to be there. So I know they're open to getting some good stuff that will help them. And then hopefully some of the other things that we can kind of put a thumb down on the bad players with some of the legislation and make it where it's not so easy to manipulate the system. That's kind of our focus. And like I said, you have a good group. Lisa Fink, Representative Fink, she is hardcore too. And she has such a wonderful heart, which is hard to find in politics. She is probably the legislator in that I trust the most, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I just trust her in just infinitely. So there are a lot of people that God is starting to bring into the mix too, where it's going to end up being an entire caucus, which is what we call the entire Republican group, that is going to be behind this, and then some. I think Democrats were starting to come around. So let's get this.
That's amazing. Yes,
yeah.
Let's get this fixed. We're getting the momentum. We're gonna get this done.
To keep it going, though.
Yes. I do want to share with you. A stranger reached out to me probably about 6 months after Alec and Lydia passed and said, she couldn't confirm for sure, but she believes that the judge that she had in Maricopa County overturned her original temporary orders ruling and made it so that her children were at full custody with her because of what happened to Alec and Lydia, because her ex was abusive and had a lot of the same traits that my estranged husband had. And so she thinks that the reason she did that was because of that judge seeing what happened to my kids in the media. Wow. So that's, I mean, we can't prove that, but that's just, again, in and of itself, like, okay, we're getting people to listen and to actually pay attention.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because Alan, he's been part of the family courts for a while, and he wasn't even aware of your case. I didn't realize that he wasn't. I thought, I've told so many people about you. I thought I had shared that with Alan, but we got on that call together and he went, Rachel, I didn't even know. Mm-hmm. And so it just really had an effect on him. So I think you're doing a great job getting your story out there, but we need to do even more here in Arizona.
I'm only one person. I need all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as this gets going, I have plans to get you out there more and to get this piece of legislation out there so we can get a lot of attention, because, I know the reason that you want to honor your kids. I can't imagine the heartache you still feel and how much you miss them.
Yeah.
But to be able to help others through them and to just get, make sure this doesn't happen again. That's such an amazing thing to do and a selfless thing for you to do in this. But we have to, I guess that's a silver lining in what you went through. But the more that people know, I think the better, all in all, period, for this family court stuff. So,
yeah. Before we close, I want to give you the floor if there's anything else you'd like to share with our listeners. And then I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight and your knowledge about everything and taking the time to do this.
Well, I appreciate you, and I just can't imagine. I know you say people tell you you're strong all the time, and I know, like you said, your faith in God is what gives you that strength. And I know how that is, but I can't imagine having to have the strength, to rely on him so heavily as you have with what you've been through. And I guess I want to just say, I pray that God just pours out blessings on you for what you're doing, for being willing to just be so brave and in this fight, because what you're doing, like I said, it's so selfless, because you're going to end up helping others and helping potentially reform an entire, branch of the government that needs it. And that's why I think your story is so important to get out there, and is part of my plan as this Alec and Lydia Act moves forward. And of course, too, I will look forward to hopefully getting to meet you in December when you're out in Arizona. So.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Representative Rachel Keshel. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Voices Against Familicide. If this episode has moved you, please share it with anyone and everyone. Also, please leave a 5-star review and rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. This helps the algorithm push out to more people. Again, if you need more resources, you can go to our website, voicesagainstfilicide.odoo.com. And until next time, remember, be kind and always abound in hope. Bye-bye.